Man, I'm really starting to feel like Corey Kenshin with my release schedule. But it's not about the quantity of videos, it's about the quality. With that being said, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, my goal is to make you a better Vanguard player going out than you were when you came in. I believe that if you work on these 3 tips that I'm going to provide you today, you truly will achieve that goal of being that Vanguard player everybody wants on their team. If you enjoyed this video and found these tips useful, be sure to leave the video a like, but most importantly, subscribe for more Vanguard content because that is the direction I see this channel going in the future. Now, a little bit about myself before we get into the tips. I'm currently peaked at GM1. I play on console. I main Vanguard. I have Lord on 6, almost 7 of the tanks. I'm aiming to get them all. But I am well versed and well experienced in the role of Vanguard. I love Vanguard. I love the job. I love the feeling. I love being the front man. I love the responsibility. It's really a thankless role, and I'm here for it. I have that mindset of either you go through me or around me, and you're not going through me. So moving on to the tips. Basically, it's things that I believe are the fundamentals, and if you master the fundamentals, you will infinitely be better than a lot of people. So these 3 things I'm going to tell you now, work on them. And if you go into your quick play matches or even your comp matches or whatever, and you focus on these 3 things, you really will set yourself apart. And those 3 things are take and hold space, force enemy cooldowns, and mitigate as much damage as possible. Now, and before somebody tries to rifle me in the comments, oh, he said quick play. Yeah, no. I personally do not take a character into competitive until I get Lord on them. That's just my philosophy on it. Now, obviously, Season 0, I didn't do this. I think I got Lord on my first 2 or 3 tanks, and then I've only played them in competitive until I acquired a new character on Lord in quick play. I feel like in quick play, it's a more relaxed environment. You're able to take more risks than you would be in competitive. That way you can learn how your character can interact with certain things. You can play into your strengths, you can play into your weaknesses, and you can't necessarily get in trouble for quote unquote throwing. Under no circumstances do I say, oh no, you cannot play a character unless you're Lord on them. I don't, that's just my personal philosophy. You guys do whatever you're comfortable with. Obviously, you shouldn't take a new character like the Human Torch or the Thing freaking day 2 and throw them in comp. No, you shouldn't be able to do that. You should, spend some hours on the character and get a firm understanding of how they work. But I personally just wait until I get Lord. Now, we're going to dive deeper into the 3 things that I had just said. We're going to start off with the taking and holding space. Now, what do I mean taking and holding space? I mean making decisions and doing things that move my team forward. If it's convoy, I'm moving a little bit past the cart to always maintain and occupy empty space. If it's domination, same thing. I will move just past the point a little bit to try and hold and slow down the enemy team's advancement. Mainly the concept behind this is that I want to force my enemy into an uphill battle at all times. If we can get to the point first, if we can control the most space, they're going to be fighting uphill to try and stop us to some degree. Especially in domination, convoy is a little different. As horrible as the saying might sound, but it's better to punch down than it is to punch up. Listen, honestly, just take any advantage you can have. Anyway, the term also would be considered denying space. You're not allowing the enemy to occupy the empty or open space because you're in it. There's another term, anchoring. I'm honestly not entirely sure what people mean and consider anchoring. Normally anchoring is you're in that position that doesn't move. You don't move, but typically that's like the person in the back. I'm not really sure. Personally, I don't think tanks should, especially if you're a solo tank, you shouldn't be anchoring the back. I feel like you should always be in the action. Now if they're running dive, that can change a little bit, but generally and normally tanks should be in the action, considering you're the biggest target. You can mitigate the most damage, you can take the most damage, you give out pretty good damage. Yeah, and typically, anchoring, it's the way I see it, it's better in defensive situations when you're that character or in that position where you don't want to move. So I think of characters like Penny Parker, who can completely shut down an area, a point. You can make the enemy completely avoid wanting to go there. Groot, he can, wall off enemies, put walls in certain spots that force people to take a different path. This is great, area deniement techniques. At the end of the day, it really is just about occupying power positions. And what I mean by power positions is if your team was to lose it or not have it, you would be at a significant disadvantage. This could be high ground, maybe a choke point, maybe a certain flank route, something to that degree. And also by holding and taking space, I mean, not falling back at at the first sign of trouble, at the first sign of pressure, right? If you went up there and you're holding that space, hold that space. If you take some damage, 200, 300, worth of damage, sit there for a second or two. Let your support have the opportunity to do their job, but just be mindful that they're fighting uphill. They're fighting into you. You have them where you want them. Don't let them just push around you. Don't let them just push through you. Hold your ground, fight back, and hope that your team provides you that support and does their job as well. So important thing to remember, right? The goal in these stalemate situations is to make the other person budge, right? Make the enemy budge, because if you can get them to budge, you can snowball that momentum into a team wipe or capturing the point, or whatever the case may be. So that's why I say your job as Vanguard is to hold that ground, hold your ground, hold that space. Do not run. Do not fall back at the first sign of trouble, because the repercussions could be game changing. No matter what, hold your ground, trust your teammates. It starts with you. Lastly, for this tip, and very, very important, displace the enemy. If you're able to wall them off as Groot, push them as Thor, web them out of the sky as Penny, this is huge. You're forcing them to react, and that's changing how they wanted to play the game, and this is a super, super powerful thing to have to do. This creates opportunity for you and your teammates to be able to make a play. Next, I want to talk about my approach with forcing enemy cooldowns. Now, you achieve this by having constant, consistent pressure on a single target. Now, it's very important that you keep up with this target, because if you don't get the kill, or if you just let them run off, that's going to be easy healing for the enemy supports, which turns into easy value towards their ultimates. With that being said, if you can avoid it, I would say avoid the tank battles as often as you can, just because that's, again, going to be free healing for the enemy support. Now, obviously, in a game like this, you can't just flat out not fight the tank. But, let's say you're both full health and you're just slugging it out. Neither one of you should technically die in that matter, especially in like a 1v1, or if you guys are both being pocketed or whatever the case may be. That's just feeding into your support's ult. There are, other better targets that you should prioritize, and that's all I'm saying by this. Diving into a little deeper at that, let's say you're running like a dive. Let's say you're playing Cap or Venom, you maybe even Hulk. You dive the back line, you force a CC, you force a movement ability, and then maybe your health is low and you got to peel out, right? You made them use those cooldowns, which now should have opened up opportunity for your DPS or maybe your other tank to swoop in and get the kill. That's all I'm really talking about here. You created that opportunity, you forced those cooldowns. Let's say you're Magneto, right? You're consistently poking them. You're looking at them in the back. You're kind of avoiding what's happening in front of you directly. You're poking, and you're trying to force cooldowns. That's creating opportunity while also having to do everything else, being the frontline pressure, not giving up space. It's a lot to do, but it's part of the job. Because again, it's all about creating opportunity for you and your teammates to make a play. Lastly, with my concept of forcing cooldowns, and communication plays a big role into this, but it's not required per se. You have to kind of manage what abilities are being used and what abilities haven't been used, because obviously if you cause, let's say, Namor to use his bubble, but no one's around to know that, or whatever the case may be, being able to communicate that, hey, Namor can't escape, Namor can't run, that is basically saying, like, here guys, I gave you this opportunity on a silver platter. Or in the same token, let's say you're playing Cap and he forced Loki to use his runes and his swap, right? He's now a sitting duck. So let's say you run, get a health pack, and you go back, and how long of a cooldown they have. You go back in and you're able to get the kill. Like, communication and keeping track of this stuff is going to be very important. It might seem like a lot of work, but it's honestly easier than it seems. I will say that it's not solely just that as well. It's also smart to know that, let's say you're playing Magneto, let's say the enemy has a really big move or something. It's good to know to save that to counter their ability, or to keep you or a teammate alive. So it's not strictly an offensive mindset. There's definitely some key defensive elements to it as well. Now, lastly, and one of the most important jobs of a Vanguard, if not the main job of the Vanguard, mitigating damage. Now, there's all sorts of ways to mitigate damage, and I am happy to share my opinion on how to do it the best. Also, what I will say is in this game, it's actually pretty cool. I like how they do it. Any damage you receive also counts as mitigating damage, so just keep that in mind as well. Firstly, when it comes to this, just a disclaimer, very important to know when to fall back. I know earlier I said, don't just give up free space or whatever the case may be at the first sign of damage. And that's true, but let's say we have Hulk, right? Hulk has 750 health. At a certain point, let's say you're around 400, maybe 350, start peeling back, start backing up so your supports are able to support you. Let's say you start off 6v6, but then you lose a teammate, you're 5v5. It's time to start considering in your head, okay, we're down a teammate. What type of teammate? Was it a DPS, a tank, a support? What value are they providing? It's time to start thinking about those things so that if you lose another teammate, right, you need to start peeling back just a little bit. Now, this is the easiest way to mitigate damage, right? Doing soft little resets, soft little regroups, because by mitigating losses, you're instantly mitigating damage. Next, and honestly, we're all kind of guilty of doing it. We need to peel for our supports more. Ironically enough, in the Marvel Rivals Twitter community, I had made a post asking people like, "Hey, what are your thoughts on peeling?" And honestly, the results were shocking. If you're a solo tank, a lot of people don't really expect you to do it. I still think that to some degree you should. You should be in some position to be able to help. However, a lot of people were saying that it's on the DPS players. And if you're playing two tanks, obviously the more mobile one definitely needs to peel. If the enemy tank dove your backline, yes, they did their job. That's what they are designed to do. And yes, they're going to be displacing you to some degree, but giving up that little bit of ground is going to be better in the long run than losing a teammate, especially if that teammate's a support. Protect your team. Don't be selfish. Be selfless. Save your Magneto bubble for your support or someone diving. Save your mini Groot walls as like a quick damage shield. Also, another thing that people don't really say a lot, if you see someone's being dove on, dive into that. Get into that. Get right in the middle of that fight. Draw the attention, because you're taking the attention off of their target and you're bringing it on yourself. Because if they ignore you, you either, again, create opportunity, get the kill, whatever the case may be. Take the attention, demand the attention, take that damage. You're built for it. That's literally what you're designed to do. Vanguard is a very push-pull role. There's explosive moments, there's slow moments, and you got to be able to navigate on that in between. It's a very thankless job. Sometimes you're going to feel like you couldn't have done more, and sometimes you're going to feel like you didn't do enough. It's rare you're going to be appreciated because you're not getting the flashy 5K kills, or you're not healing your team, saving lives in that manner. But it's definitely noticeable when you have a good Vanguard, and it's definitely noticeable when you don't. This role impacts this game, and any game for that matter, more than I think people give it credit for. Take pride in the role. Not everybody can do it. Not everybody can shoulder that responsibility. Steadfast and keep pushing forward. Never bulge, not for yourself, but for your team. That's what's important. Thank you all for watching the video. Be sure to comment your thoughts down below. I will be sure to respond. And with that being said, stay around for more Vanguard content. I got plenty more coming out because, like I said, that's the direction I see this channel going. I thank you guys again, and I will see you in the next one.